I can. I can see Gwen. Yes. Hello.
Okay. Hello.
All right. Good. I got everybody. All right. All right. It looks like we're live. It's 8 o'clock. So welcome to First Friday, Williamson Inc. Small Business Toolkit. My name is Matt Largen, President and CEO of the organization. And we're thrilled that you're here today joining us to have this really important conversation. So thank you to our panelists for being here. Thanks everybody for joining us, and looking forward to a great interactive conversation as well. Historically, Black businesses have been underrepresented in Williamson County. Today we are highlighting 3 Black businesses who have collectively been in business for years in Williamson County, and they're going to talk about their experiences starting their business, growing their business, operating their businesses in our community. They're innovative and successful. We've got a lot to learn from their stories. For those who have ever listened to the podcast, How I Built This on NPR, that's really what my goal is, to make it like How I Built This on NPR. It's really learning about those critical moments that set these businesses apart and allowed them to grow and succeed. So I've got a number of questions to ask today for the panelists, but we want to make sure we include our audience in the conversation. So please use the chat or Q&A to post your questions throughout the program this morning. And when you do, please share your name and organization prior to asking your question. So let's go ahead and jump in and meet our panelists. We'll start with Gwendolyn. Well, I'll just introduce the panelists first and jump into questions. So Gwendolyn Sims with Sims Diversity Consulting. We've got Niccole Jackson with Wine and Designs, and then Jemond Daughtry with the Good Food Group, which operates McDonald's in Middle Tennessee. So Gwendolyn, we'll go ahead and start with you, and we'll have the same question to start with to sort of set the stage for this conversation. Tell us about your company and really focus on both how you got started and why you got started.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. Sims Strategic Diversity Consultants designs and manages diversity business program strategies for companies who desire to do business with small, minority-owned, woman-owned, and veteran-owned businesses. Collectively, we refer to these businesses as diversity business enterprises. Actually, my business started as a result of being employed with a company who lost their contract with TVA. In the process of all of this, they asked me to relocate. And I had no desire to relocate because I had just moved back to the area, purchased a house, and frankly, I love Tennessee. So in the meantime, my former employer in Dallas, Texas, called and asked if I would provide consulting services in the areas of HR and small business compliance to their Atlanta office. I had no idea about the consulting industry and quickly decided I needed to do some research. So I did lots and tons of research. I talked to consultants about how do you bill for your services? How do you respond to requests for your services? Oddly enough, the person that really mentored me through the entire process was the boss that asked me, my former boss that asked me to provide current services to their Atlanta offices. So he was very helpful in directing me to people and materials that helped me to jumpstart into the consulting business. So that's how I kickstarted my business off. In the meantime, I had gone through Leadership Nashville and the alumni, contact with the alumni, and a lot of them started to introduce me to city, state, and federal officials, as well as some executives in Middle Tennessee, which ultimately I talked to them about my services. And as a result, I've worked for city, state, federal, and local companies here in Tennessee, as well as Atlanta and DC. So that's the story of how I started. It was out of the need of being able to stay in Tennessee, and I love it here.
Well, that's great. Gwen, we hear that story a lot, actually, of people even turning down promotions to make sure they stay in that office in Tennessee because they love it here so much. I'd just love to follow up. As you did your due diligence and started your company and talking to those other consultants, was there a conversation that stood out with you, or did you start to recognize common threads in terms of best practices for consulting practices?
Well, I guess the biggest eye-opener to me, and this came from a mentor, is that when you're doing what you've always done, you're just doing it in a different way. In other words, my career was centered on working and helping small businesses. I was doing HR, compliance. So going into consulting was just reinventing myself to do what I've always done, but in a different way, in a more effective way.
Great. Great. Thanks, Gwen. So, Niccole, we'll jump to you and the same question. Talk about your company, and then talk about the focus on why you got started and how you got started.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Niccole, and I actually own a franchise with Wine Design. And Wine Design is actually in the entertainment space. We provide an atmosphere and a place for people to come and socialize and basically do an activity, painting, or some type of craft while they are just enjoying each other's company. So we do family events, we do corporate events, we do events for children, girls' nights out, bachelorette parties, etc. You name it, we can do it. But not only do we do that in our space, we also do it out in the community. So we have been on location to several wineries and hosted events. We've been to corporate offices. We even visit homes. So again, we're in the entertainment space known as Paint and Sip. The way I got started was I actually have worked a number of years for two different large corporations. My journey to Tennessee came by way of an engineering and HR background. I basically was part of a divestiture that relocated me to Tennessee. You would think, okay, wow, you're still with a company, that's great, so why jump? So for me, as I moved and transferred here, I began to build a house, and the organization that I relocated with actually went through another reorganization, and they asked me to move in this process. And for the first time, my daughter is dyslexic, and so for the first time, we were actually in an area that provided services for her. So I made a decision at that time to really focus on my daughter, look for something that she and I could do together. With her being dyslexic and having challenges in school, I wanted her to figure out who she is, what are her natural skills, what can she do without me defining it for her. And so hence I looked at this because she's always been the type of child that would take socks, cut them up, make doll clothes out of them, things of that nature. So I wanted her to experience what it was like to be able to do something positive for herself without having to worry about the schooling part. So that's how we got into wine design.
Oh, that's great. How's your daughter doing now, Niccole?
Excellent. She is now 17, getting ready to hit that and just got a car, so she's really excited about learning how to drive. So.
Okay, great. Well, good. Well, thanks, Niccole. We'll jump back into stories later. I'll go to my friend Jemond. And Jemond, we've had a chance to get to know each other over the last year. You serve on the board of Williamson Inc. And as you and I have gotten to know each other, I was struck by the importance of your family legacy to McDonald's and how it set the stage for you and the Good Food Group. So talk about that family legacy and what it meant to you to build and operate your business. What were the important lessons your family passed on to you, Jemond? Jemond, I think you're on mute.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
All right. You caught me. So thank you very much, Matt. First, it's an honor to be here. So thank you very much for the invitation to share a little bit of our story and my perspective. As you know, my path was a little different from the other distinguished panelists you have here and some of the audience listeners maybe. As you've mentioned, I did not start the organization that I'm blessed to lead. So I would say first and foremost, my parents, James and Jemond Daughtry, passed on to me what we try to continue forward on a day-to-day basis, and that is the culture of putting God first, investing into the lives of our people. I would say that many things have changed since our inception here in Williamson and Rutherford County in 2001. But one thing that has not changed has been the way that we treat our people, how we seek to develop and grow them. Also, the way that we contribute to our community and how we try to honor God through our actions and business dealings. So I'd say that they didn't teach me as much about being a business owner as they showed me about how to conduct myself as a leader.
Wow, that's great. Jemond, can you think of any specific lessons that still resonate with you today? You mentioned that, certainly how you do your business has changed over time, but the what and the why about investing in people and putting God first is a constant. Any specific things that still resonate that your parents passed on to you? I mean, I'm sure a lot, but does anything stand out to you, Jemond?
Yeah, so culture comes to mind. And there are certain activities that we do within our organization to protect our culture. So one of those activities, as we have as my administration has our weekly meetings, we start off with prayer. We invite God to come and support our plans, and really strive to act in a way that will bring great results for our brand, McDonald's, and for our people and for our community. And if I didn't mention before, so we do operate 9 McDonald's locations in Middle Tennessee here, in Franklin and Brentwood, Laverne and Smyrna.
Great. Okay. Great. Thanks, Jemond. And we'll have a chance to jump into some more specifics in your story a little bit later. We'll go back to you, Gwen, and let's talk a little bit more exactly about what your company does. And I think this is really important, the notion of creating, and not just creating, but sustaining inclusion and diversity plan. So this event is really meant for small businesses. It's our small business toolkit. So why should a small business create this kind of plan, and how does it help them become more successful? What's the difference between a plan that just pays lip service to the notion of inclusion and diversity versus something that is more sustainable and long-term and really impacts, and how does it impact a company's bottom line?
Okay, let me start with why should a small business create a diversity business program? Most small businesses don't need to create a diversity plan. I believe that small businesses should have a policy whereby they work with other small businesses. For instance, if you're a restaurant business, I would have a policy that says that goods and services, I would try to do a cooperative agreement to work with other small businesses. But to jump ahead here, I create diversity programs for large businesses who desire to work with small businesses. So even though a small business may not have a program, they need to understand why a program is created. It's created so that they will have more opportunities. And when they understand who are those businesses that are committed to small businesses, who are those businesses who have real programs, and if they know of businesses, ask questions, ask them, do you have a policy? Do you have a person designated to manage this program? Do you have a written program? So while depending on how large they are, and the small businesses that I deal with are small businesses who make under $100,000 a year, and they're looking to serve to provide goods and services to the large businesses that I develop programs for.
Okay. No, that's really helpful. So really, a part of your role is connecting those small businesses with those large businesses, and then helping those large business put those plans in place. Can you talk about the bottom line implications for some of the large businesses you work with to have these inclusion and diversity plans?
Two things. Some companies are very concerned about their bottom line. I get asked often, if I do this program, how does it affect my bottom line?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little leery about those companies because, to be honest with you, sometimes it's not going to affect their bottom line. But what it does affect and impact is the economics of the community.
Mm.
If you hire a small business to provide goods and services to you, that small business is now able to hire employees.
Mm.
Those employees that that small business hires are now able to go out and shop in the community. So sometimes the impact is the value of having this program is how economically does it affect the community. Now, there is a possibility that some companies can see some results in their bottom line when they work with diverse companies who are able to provide competitive goods and services. And I have been told by some clients that because they decided to focus on diverse companies, they found that some of the companies that they had excluded in the past were more competitive than the companies that they were currently using. So it makes sense to go out of your comfort zone of using vendors that you've used for years. And I'll have to say it honestly, everybody likes to do business with, well, try and get to know new people. And that's what I do. I try to bring companies together to encourage them to come out of their comfort zone and look at diverse businesses, small, diverse businesses.
Great. Well, and I'll say too, as an economic developer by trade, the health of a business is absolutely connected to the health of a community. And the healthier you are as a community, the more people that have opportunities and have places for them to go and to shop and to create opportunities for living wage, the better environment it creates for that large businesses to be in. So you're right, maybe there's not a direct connection to a bottom line, but there is a direct connection to the health of a community, which makes it a better place for that large company to retain and attract employees to. So, you know, clearly there's a ripple effect from the work that you do, Gwen, on the companies you touch. So Niccole, let's jump to you. I understand you actually went through a somewhat recent expansion into Spring Hill, into a second location. So I guess two questions. The first question was, let's go back to the beginning. Why did you pick Franklin for wine and design? And then why did you decide to expand in Spring Hill?
Okay, so for me, I was currently working in in Franklin when I first decided that I wanted to take on this business. And so what I did was I took a look at what was going on in the market around me. So that included the entire surrounding area for businesses that already existed. And so as I began to look, I noticed that there wasn't this type of business in the Spring Hill nor in the Franklin market. So I also took a look at the target market for this business to look to see, does it currently exist in this area? You know, is it a viable area for me? So as I began to put together my business plan actually included having a couple of different locations right from the very beginning. So as I approached the market, I looked for immediate opportunities to be able to expand. So I put together my business plan, which is very important as you're starting up a business or even considering doing a franchise, working with the statistics in terms of your market, your competitors, really kind of doing your entire SWOT analysis. And so for me, this particular area was a growing area. And so I wanted to be a part of an area that was really, really growing. And so I actually started planning for both businesses or both locations when I opened. So my plan always included 6 months apart. So I actually started probably about 3 years ago, the Franklin location, and then I expanded within 6 months of that because I was on track with all of my financials and everything that I had already put in place from a business plan. Now, I will say, a little different, a little off script here, with the COVID current environment, one of the things that I have learned as a small business owner is that you have to be able to pivot. Take a look at what's going on in the market. And so for me, I've actually made a decision to close my Spring Hill location because, as you know, I'm in what we call an entertainment space. An entertainment space right now are not necessarily considered to be essential, which means we have to operate at less than, an ideal capacity. And so for my studios, they normally operate at 60 to 78 people. And now with the social distancing, I'm limited to 10 to 12 people in my studio. And so as a business owner, it is important for you to take a look at what your original plan was and be willing to adjust that. And so for me, I have chosen to adjust. Now, it doesn't mean that I won't be servicing the Spring Hill market because I'm still in there. I'm just choosing to do it in a different format. And so one of the things, again, it is very critical that things are changing in your market to be able to anticipate those. But when you aren't able to anticipate, go back and regroup. Seek out mentors and people that can coach you through making those tough decisions. But it's very important to be able to do that so that you don't continue to throw money after something if it's not going to work or if there's too much risk. So I just wanted to kind of add that to the conversation today. A little different than what was expected, but it is where I am right now.
Oh, I think that's great, Niccole. And, for me, it's important to remember this is First Friday and it's for the audience of small businesses. And so, Niccole, I know there are a lot of small businesses listening and needed to hear the importance of pivoting in these times of uncertain, and it's only becoming more uncertain. We'll get into the COVID question for sure because it's touching everybody, but I noticed on your website, you're doing a lot of virtual events, but it's more than that. You're actually creating you're putting together the materials for people to do it at their home or other location, and you're doing it on a pretty consistent basis too. So go ahead and talk about how's that gone for you? How's that the way you've innovated, how's that impacted your business, Niccole?
So for me, it's been different in terms of before I was kind of more of a solo act. And what I have found is throughout this process, it's important to partner with others that are also seeking and targeting your market, and you're able to expand and grow your business more. So what I have actually personally done, I've gone back through my network and began to partner with people that may have the audience that I need and begin to do different types of events as opposed to just doing them by myself. So I have actually tapped into a global kind of market, so expanded beyond the walls of Williamson County, but although being based here. And so I think it's very important to partner with others as you're going through transition and not feel as though you have to do it all on your own.
I think that's great. And I think there's also a lesson about the importance of partnerships. And I think everybody on the call knows this. You don't create partnerships when you need them. You create partnerships to call on when you need them. And so that network is something you build over time. It doesn't just start when you're in trouble. And clearly, Niccole, you've shown over time, you've been able to build that network and then call on them in ways that they can all benefit when the environment changes.
Yes.
So Jemond, let me jump to you because you mentioned this, and I think this is really important for anybody, the notion of investing in the lives of people, developing and growing people. So talk about things that you've learned and techniques that you've found that have worked and have resonated when it comes to effectively growing and managing those employees, especially in a high turnover industry like food services.
Right. So I'd like to, kind of first start with a bit of the foundation, and then kind of get to the management piece. So wage always has a component of the conversation when you're dealing with your employee base. And we're in a very competitive marketplace, and there are plenty of options that our employees have to work. So you've got to offer the right wage, for your business economics. Now, having said that, people are also not going to tolerate being in an environment where they don't feel valued. So one of the keys, in my opinion, is to understand how your employees feel valued. And for some, it may kind of boil down to the dollar, but for others, perhaps they want an opportunity to work in the hospitality industry. For others, they may be looking for leadership opportunity or career advancement. During our current environment, some may be looking for a safe place to work or with job security. Others may want recognition and rewards. So I say ultimately, it's an individual kind of determination in this high kind of turnover industry. And you have to find a way to meet your employees where they need to be met as a foundation in terms of turnover. Then as it relates to the management, I would go right back to culture and making sure that we have the right leadership within the restaurants. So speaking at the restaurant leader level, making sure that they can empathize, with today's employee, and really drive the business through and management through connecting with the employees and connecting with the value that they are looking for. So I like to correlate our success with the give and receiving of value. So as the employee brings value to our organization, then we bring value into their lives as well. And we're trying to make sure that our restaurant leaders and my staff, it starts at the top, and we make sure that we're communicating that message, that we need to understand what they're looking for and drive results through meeting their needs as well.
That's great, Jemond. I think that's really important. You said something really, really key. I think people won't operate in an environment where they don't feel valued. And, I know right now, obviously times are tough, but there will be a point where we're back to full employment in Williamson County. And I firmly believe the way people were treated during this really difficult time will be remembered after this time is over. So those fundamentals don't go away. So that's great advice, Jemond. I really appreciate it. Just as a reminder, the Q&A is open. If anybody.
Hey, Matt, I think you may have gone to mute.
Don't know how that happened. Thank you, Jemond, for that. Just as a reminder, Q&A is open. I've got questions to ask, but if there's anything that you want to ask, make sure you do that in Q&A. Gwendolyn, we'll go back to you. During your work with the Bredesen administration, you actually shut the doors of your business to avoid any conflicts of interest. So talk about the importance of integrity in operating a business and what lessons people can learn from that.
Absolutely. Integrity is so important in business. Honesty, staying true to your values, is what I guess motivates me to continue to do what I do. For example, there are so many small businesses, and particularly at this point in time with the virus, that I know that in 6 months from now, those businesses will not be able to operate. I'm always willing to work with those businesses and help them develop relationships. I truly believe in mentoring. That's my new philosophy now, because I noticed that some of the programs are not working the way they should work. So with my clients, I make it very clear what my values and principles are. A lot of the information that I give to the public has to do with how well companies are doing with their diversity participation, particularly the dollars that they spend. I will not compromise and report information that is not correct. For example, when we're counting the participation of women-owned businesses, minorities, small and service disabled-owned businesses, those dollars are counted based upon the legitimacy of the business as well as the work that they are performing. Thankfully, the clients that I deal with want that information reported out correctly. I have in the past worked with a company who wanted to inflate their numbers, and I had to say, no, I will not put my name on something that I know not to be true. So most people who know me know that if you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you the truth. You may not want to hear it, but my principles, my values, for me, is what has made me sustain in my industry.
I think that's great, Gwendolyn. I think we all need people in our lives and our business that are willing to tell us the truth, the kind truth, but still the truth. It gets really dangerous if you're surrounded by people that just tell you what you want to hear. So everybody needs people like that in their lives for sure. We have our first live question. I'll ask this to the group, and we touched on this earlier, and we'll go with you, Niccole, because you brought it up. But the question we got was, what are 3 keys to success and sustainability during COVID and even the year after COVID?
So one of the things I am going to say is, number one is realize you do not have all of the answers. That is very important to realize, and you don't have to have all of the answer. There are people that are out there that are willing to give you information. There are people that have links to tons and tons of information. Be willing to say, I need help. That would be the first one. The second one would be, again, being willing to pivot. Realize that what you thought you were headed into, you may have to adjust it. Sometimes we get stuck on our own plans and set up in such a way that we feel like this is the way it has to be. It doesn't. You have to be okay with change. You know, if you have been totally all of your life not okay with change, realize that we're in a changing environment and it could change day to day. Your plans that you have set forth for the next 6 months may change. Realize that you have to become very agile. And third, and I would say this one, it probably is really first. And for me, it's about being in prayer. It's like, okay, Lord, you got to order my stuff. Being okay with getting grounded in what your fundamental values are. And for me, I can tell you through this process, there were a couple of days where I was like, I'm putting a cover over my head. I can't do this. I'm done. You know, and I realized that I was focusing more on the problem as opposed to my source. And once I changed what I was focusing on, things began to open and shift for me. And so those are the 3 things that I would say from a success standpoint that are important for me.
That's great. That's great, Niccole. Thanks. Jemond, Gwen, you want to jump into that again? 3 keys to success, sustainability for what we're going through, but then even what happens a year after what we go through.
Right. I agree with Niccole. Companies will have to change. I'm working with 2 companies right now who are basically having to rebrand themselves. So often companies want to do what they've done for years. And as time changes, you must find a way. When I started in business years ago, I was doing probably 1 or 2 activities. Today, we have an entree of about 10 different services that we provide. So in my communications and advice and recommendations to small businesses, just as Niccole said, you've got to be willing to turn on a dime. You cannot exist thinking that you're going to go, not in this day and time, doing what you did 20 years ago. You got to add some flavor to it, some variety. And rebranding now is probably in small business industry.
Great. Thanks, Gwendolyn. Jemond, anything you want to add to that question?
Absolutely. Definitely agree with what Niccole and Gwendolyn had shared. For me, I would say leading with the safety of your people. That was paramount for us. We took a lot of steps to ensure, and we employ close to around 300 individuals within the restaurants. And it was paramount to me to make sure that we were doing everything that we could to make sure safety routines were in place, the proper PPE was in place in the restaurants prior to things becoming mandated by county and government ordinances, and even by McDonald's as well. So what that meant for us was, while we had the opportunity to remain open initially and during some phases, we went ahead and closed our lobbies immediately, or as soon as we were able to, and went to the drive-through model. It meant for us sourcing masks as best we could prior to getting them through, just kind of waiting and getting them through the other prescribed sources for our industry. We sourced the digital thermometers to make sure that we could implement that wellness check and that temperature check prior to employees beginning their shift. And those went a long way, I think, as you mentioned. Our employees, our contributors are going to remember how they were treated and thought of during this time. We value them and we value their lives, and we put that over our business, at the time. So I would say leading with your people, the safety of your people, you're not going to go wrong there. And then, letting the other business follow. And then also with being flexible and being prepared to shift, and also, being aware of the business dynamics as well as things change. So right now, pre-COVID, our operations were a little different. For example, we've got kiosks within our restaurants, and they had been used quite heavily. So after we return to normal, we need to reassess what the customers are going to be comfortable doing, and those sorts of things. So just being aware of how your business changes over time, and how your customers relate to your business over time as well.
Yeah, and the second part of that question is so difficult, and jump in if you want to. I'll get to some other audience questions, but it's that year after. I mean, how do you plan for year after when you're really planning? And I know this firsthand with our organization, week by week. Any specific tips from you all about how you plan for a year after this in this incredible time of uncertainty that seems to be getting more uncertain by the day?
Well, I would say that we're taking an opportunity now to continue to invest in our people in terms of development, in terms of online learning, for leadership and for our management teams. So we don't know what the future is going to look like in terms of our business model, or what the customers are going to be comfortable, how they're going to be comfortable interacting with us. But we do know that we're going to need effective leaders who can empathetically lead their teams to serve our customers. So that's not going to change. So we can double down on that while we're in this period, and no matter what the future holds, we'll be prepared from a people investment standpoint, and we'll be able to react and serve that way.
Great. Yeah, that's a tough one. So let me, actually, it's interesting. My friend Celestia Ware read my mind, and he posted a question that's actually on my list that you all saw as you got these questions before the event. So what are some suggested books that you like? Are there certain social media accounts you follow or podcasts you listen to that provide education and inspiration for you all? So books, social media, or podcasts? And Gwendolyn, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Okay. Well, for me in my industry, I'm keeping abreast of what's happening through a lot of diversity websites, because I am often looking at compliance, how well a program is working and whether or not it's in compliance. I do a lot of reading with SBA, Small Business Administration. I do a lot of reading with the Society of Diversity Professionals, who talks about the trends in diversity programs, and also who now gives information to companies about how to deal during the COVID-19 virus situation. So I do webinars a lot of webinars. And in the meantime, I'm doing a lot of procurement training again, because procurement laws are changing because of the COVID-19.
Great, thanks. Niccole, you want to take that? So books, social media accounts, podcasts that you find educational and inspirational.
So for me, given that I am a sole provider for my daughter and myself, one of the things that I'm taking a look at is some of my financial books that I've looked at in the past, looking at my personal portfolio to make sure I'm minimizing any risks that I have for myself. And so I like Susan Orman. So I'm taking a look there, and I am also keeping abreast of things through my SHRM network. So a lot of the HR types of magazines. I'm taking a look there to see what's going on in the world of dealing with individuals, and even running a company where you may have additional employees. So those are the things that I'm currently.
Great. Jemond, same to you. Books, social media, or podcasts?
Right. So certainly I can recommend two books. One was very instrumental in helping me to implement change to the kind of the long-standing structure of our organization. And that one was called The Process Matters by Joel Brockner. And it shares what people are looking for when you're trying to implement change. So whether it's the structural change that we went through, or, if you're wanting to be more inclusive with your diversity, whatever change, there's a process that you can go about it. And the book kind of clearly identifies that process and helped me through the change. And the other is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And it shares how to work on your business rather than working in your business, which I think is, it was very eye-opening. And it also speaks to the value piece that I mentioned before. A lot of times customers, employees, they don't know exactly what they're looking for. They just know that they're looking for something called value, or something called, hospitality, but they don't know exactly what that looks like when they need it. So it kind of speaks to how to meet those needs of your customers, employees. And also I would share, it's great to read a book and kind of ingest the information, but it's an even better experience to read a book together in a book club. So we had the opportunity to do that with the Eve Myth Revisited. I've done that a couple of times within our organization. And then also with a third book that I mentioned as well, called The Circle Maker by Mark Batterson. And, this one kind of speaks to removing the limits of your opportunities, both within your life and within your business through prayer. So those three, and then, definitely the collective growth experience by reading a book together and gaining from another person's perspective and experiences. You really can't beat that.
Oh, that's great. That's great advice from everyone. And I completely agree, Jemond, about the notion of a book club. And it can be as simple as, read a chapter and let's talk about it for an hour or two. There's power in that interactive piece. So those are great pieces of advice. I've got another question from fellow board member Jemond, my friend Tara Blue. She mentioned, and this probably more for you, for Jemond, I'm guessing, since you manage more employees, but certainly everybody feel free to jump in. Have you lost employees due to the current unemployment benefits being so generous? If so, what's your advice on incentivizing those employees, keeping them happy to stay with you?
Right. So I would say that our turnover rate has not been impacted by the external conditions here with COVID or the unemployment package. So we've not experienced that. We have offered different incentives. We were one of the small businesses that were fortunate to receive part of the PPP loan to apply for it and receive it. And we applied, 100% of what we received toward our payroll and toward our people. And so we were able to keep them on, and they were very thankful as some of their spouses were kind of downsized or furloughed from their employment. They became the source of income for their homes. So we were very fortunate to be able to keep our people on and incentivize them. And one of the ways that we thought to incentivize our people was to bonus their education around COVID. So what we did was, for all of our employees, 100%, we had them to go on to the ServeSafe website, where the COVID precautions training was for both for the takeout model and for the dine-in model. And on two separate occasions, we had 100% of our employees to go on, take the training. The first was for their education, and the second was a reinforcement. Then also, think about taking that home to your families so that they know how to reduce the spread of COVID-19. So, we were utilizing the dollars that we received, to help keep our people safe, to keep them employed. And yeah, so I hope that kind of speaks to the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jemond. Anybody else want to jump in for that one? Yeah, all right. Well, so we'll jump into the next one. And this has been brought up, and I don't think you can talk about business without talking about the importance of mentorship. Do you have a mentor in business? How important is that? And what's been that, I mentioned about the whole NPR, how I built this podcast, which is great. If anybody hasn't listened to it, it's fantastic. And there's always this moment where there's a critical time in the business that you have to make this important decision. So talk about how mentors have been important for you all as you've grown your business, especially in those really critical moments? And Niccole, we'll start with you.
So for me, having mentors has meant someone that I can bounce an idea off. I have one that I can share my fears with, because this, to be honest, is a scary time. It's something I've never dealt with before. And so having someone there that can give you sound advice, telling you, no, step here, step there, or Niccole, go back, write this down, and let me take a look at it, is very important. Again, it's kind of getting you out of the silo effect where you think you have to do it all on your own, but having a trusted advisor is extremely important as you're going through business, and especially when you're going through transition and amounts of change.
Great, thanks, Niccole. Gwendolyn?
Yes, in fact, I have two mentors who are white males. Over my lifetime, the mentors in my life have been white males. During a critical time in my business, when I was undecided about whether I wanted to continue to do this, my mentor basically sat me down and had a heart-to-heart talk with me and brought me to the reality of what it is that I want and my purpose. And I have believed in my life that I have a purpose, and that purpose is to help others. And he asked me, if you did not continue to do this, would you meet your purpose? So mentors are very important during those critical times, because in my business, there are so many highs, but there are a lot of lows, especially when I am unable to help a business achieve some of the goals that they're looking are to find work when they're out of work. So my mentors are very honest with me. They encourage me. They let me know when I'm wrong, and they let me know when I'm right. So yes, having a mentor is very, very important.
Oh, that's really beautiful, Gwendolyn. I love what you said about that question. If you did not keep doing this, would you meet your purpose? I mean, that's a question we should probably all ask ourselves on a regular basis, especially during these challenging times. So, as you mentioned, there's some really highs and lows in business, and I think how you get through the lows really says a lot about your business and your character. So talk about it. Talk about some of the challenges you've had to overcome to successfully build and operate your business, and talk about some of those. Have those challenges, or have there been specific challenges related to race?
With regards to race.
No, go ahead, Gwendolyn. Yep.
Okay, with regards to race, honestly, I've not had any challenges because of my race. And I think it's because when clients look at me, they're looking at me to help them solve a problem that's created by race. Racism has not been one of my challenges. My challenges has been cash flow and working to, honestly, to change people's outlook, our perception of what a diversity business is, particularly minority-owned businesses. I've had some challenges with older white males who do not have the experience of working with small women and minority-owned companies. Their perception is that they do not have the tools, the resources, or the qualifications to do the job. So I spent a lot of time trying to change attitudes and minds and help them to start to develop relationships in order to find out the truth about the abilities and qualifications that small businesses, particularly African-American owned business, bring to the table.
Great, thanks, Gwendolyn. Jemond, you want to take that, some challenges you've had to overcome, and then have there been challenges specifically related to race?
Yeah, certainly. And I would say I would give that question a bit of an introspective twist. And I would say that a significant challenge for me has been an internal struggle for, candidly, for, fortitude, for strength to share what needs to be shared. The context is, and I'll share quickly as I know our time is coming. I am the only Black McDonald's operator in my co-op, and our co-op stretches, here in Middle Tennessee to Chattanooga and Huntsville, Alabama. So, about 230 restaurants, and I contribute on the board of our co-op. So there, you can imagine that there was a bit of an internal challenge on how to communicate, how to voice my perspective around Black Lives Matter, around our current environment, with a room full of business leaders, my peers, that look different than me. So developing the strength, the fortitude to share the truth of what needs to be shared, from my perspective, I would say that that's the greatest kind of recent challenge. But once that was met, I have that now as part of my my toolbox, and am now able to, go forward and share in different environments as well. So.
Great. Thank you, Jemond. Niccole?
So I too had a similar experience in terms of having some internal. So as I relocated back to the South, because I've been Midwest, North, I've been in a lot of different places prior to coming here. One of my personal internal struggles around race was, would I be accepted as a Black business, as a Black-owned business? So for me, initially, when I came into the market, being in a predominantly white area, I chose to be a general manager as opposed to being. And so I eventually had to come to the truth of myself, of who I am and what I represent, and actually own the title of owner. And so for me, I struggled initially, having grown up in the South, and how different things were perceived growing up in terms of Black people being in their place. And so I struggled initially as to what that meant for me. What I have found personally, as I embrace the fact that I am the owner, things became clearer for me in terms of what I wanted to represent and who I am. What I represent is a person that has great customer service, a person that creates a caring environment, a person that cares about those that work in the business with me. And I wanted that to be more reflective as opposed to just. Now, the challenge that I've had growing my business is how to market to a very diverse marketplace. And so that's a learning that I am still going through, seeking mentors and coaches for doing that. But again, the initial struggle was embracing, the word owner of a business for me. So that was my personal struggle or challenge with race.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Niccole. Thanks for that thoughtful discussion. We just have a few minutes left, as Jemond mentioned, so let's go ahead and close this program out. I'd love for you all to just offer some closing advice to the people listening, to the small business communities and businesses that are listening. What's your best piece of advice you've ever received that you'd like to pass on to the people listening? And we'll go ahead and start with Jemond this time.
Sure, and I'll be brief. The best piece of advice that I can offer is to understand within yourself why you're doing what you're doing, what's the purpose for you doing what you're doing. And the reason is because whether you have one employee yourself or a couple hundred, you're going to have pressures You're going to have to make some decisions with your business, and everybody's going to have an opinion of how and why, and thoughts around your decision making. I would say you need to stay true to your purpose and what you're doing, and kind of endure the pressures, view them as ways to make you stronger as a business person, and continue forward.
Great, thank you. Niccole?
So I'm going to stay with my uncle used to always say, stay prayed up. So if you keep grounded in your fundamental beliefs, it will help you be a better business leader.
That's
so
great.
Again, prayed up.
That's great, Niccole. Thank you. And Gwendolyn, we'll finish for you. What's a piece of advice, or the best piece of advice you want to pass on to people listening this morning?
I'm going to say that for every no, there is a yes. So you keep going until you find the yes.
That's great. That's wonderful. And that's what it takes. As you all mentioned, there's highs and lows when it comes to running and operating your business, and we're all in such an uncertain time. So I just want to thank you all, Jemond, Niccole, Gwendolyn, for making the time to be here this morning. Thank you to our audience for listening. Wear a mask. When I wear a mask, it protects you. When you wear a mask, it protects me. It's a very simple thing you can do. And we all want to get back to some level of normal as soon as we can. So when you're out there, wear a mask. Thank you again for being here. Thanks to the panelists, and thank you for your investment in our community through your investment in Williamson Inc. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.